Sometimes in your life, your biggest problem is not the problems that you have. Generally, your biggest challenge is your attitude towards the problems in your life. An attitude can be perspective, it can be denial, it can be your choice of solutions, it can be the momentum and the approach towards those solutions, or a host of other things that create more problems for those problems that you encounter. Hmm. My name is Aso, and I make mindset, healing, growth, and empowerment videos to get us thinking differently, acting differently, and moving ourselves from one point of our life to a higher, more meaningful, and more intentional place. Your problem is not the biggest problem. Your bigger problem is how you deal with that problem, either in the way you deny its existence, the way you give it a half hearted approach and solution, the way you perceive it completely wrongly, the way you push it on other people, blame it away and expect the solutions to come to you, and a whole lot of other things that we do with best intentions to try and resolve things that are breaking us down meaningfully. Every single problem in every person's life is real, if only in their mind's eye. Even if that problem is imagined, even if that problem is just your own scope or lens through which you see life, whatever it is and however you perceive it, it's a problem in your mind's eye. And that makes it valid in the impact that it has on you. But that problem is generally not your problem. And this is a solution focused way of looking at things. Because sometimes your biggest breakthrough is walking away from that problem and looking for solutions away from that problem. Let's take, for example, somebody who is really lonely, who has low mood, and who feels depressed, and whose problem then is that feeling of depression and loneliness and inability to really do anything about it. Dwelling on that problem isn't going to lift your mood up. It's not going to make you any happier. It's not going to resolve the depression. Walking away from that problem and planning something that is interesting, looking into a future that is less hopeless and more positive and meaningful and enticing is more likely to give you a positive vibe and a value and something worth living for. Looking back and seeing times when you did well and coped well and wasn't stuck in that thing is going to remind you that there is life and a possibility and that you have skills to get around that thing. Looking away from that problem and into you and why that problem came about to begin with. Why are you low? Why are you stressed and depressed and anxious? Solving those things is more likely to create an open way for you to be able to resolve future issues or current issues better. Looking away from that problem of anxiety and low mood suddenly gives you a different view, a different scope of life. You see other people, you see other things, you see other skills and abilities in yourself that are better than you stuck in that problem, narrative, or saturated mindset. When someone says they are lonely, it's not about the walls of your house. It's not about the relationships within the house. It's about your ability to begin with to create those meaningful relationships, to fill your heart with that warmth to begin with, to warm up from inside out, to feel enough and happy within your own space before feeling enough and happy within a larger space. You're not lonely because you're alone. You're lonely because you're unable to be alone. You're lonely because you're unable to be with others meaningfully. So when you're lonely, you can't focus on those feelings of loneliness and resolve it. When you're lonely, you have to explore why you're struggling with relationships, why you're unhappy in your own space, before you can even have any meaningful external relationships. Generally, when we say we are lonely, we expect people to come into our space to make us less lonely. But that is not your solution to that problem. You have to walk away from that feeling of loneliness and into you and why you're not enough on your own. You have to move backwards into your past and see those experiences that you've had that make you feel insufficient, that make you feel unable to stand on your own, to be warm and happy and cozy on your own. Look around you and see the people who surround you and how they treat you and why you feel lonely in that space, even without social groups like churches and communities. Loneliness says something about you in terms of your internal feeling of that vacuum, even before you relate with those around you as individuals and communities. When you look at a child's behavior, sometimes you can get stuck on that behavior. Like, this child is really difficult. This child is really rude. This child does not listen. This child, this child, this child. And that is your endless focus on that problem and away from everything else that is actually the problem, like your routines, your parenting, your warmth towards that child, their experiences of neglect, trauma, bullying, and everything else away from that problem that may actually be the problem. So look away from the problem every so often when it comes to your worth, your relationship, your warmth, your success, feeling stuck, boundaries, everything else that is a meaningful, valuable problem in your life has another source, has another angle, another lens through which you can see it, another perspective and perception that will give you a wider gap to go through, which will lead to a more solution focused action than you dwelling endlessly on that problem, on how impactful it is, on how large it is, and how limited you are in terms of solutions for that problem. So, your problem is not that problem that you're staring at. Your problem is the way you're staring at it. Your problem is the fact that you're staring at that problem and not the wider, meaningful life that you can be living. Your problem is how you approach that problem with very minimal consistency, momentum, motivation, and enlisting all the support that you can have for it. So do something else away from that problem, and everything else will start to fall into place. Now, this was a bit confusing to me in terms of how do I really break this down to you. Very often in your life, the problem that you're stuck on is not the problem. The actual problem lies away from that problem that you're dealing with. I really hope that this session has found that practical way to get us to start thinking solution focused more so than problem saturated thought and action. It's very easy to get stuck on those problems and forget everything else that is beautiful and valuable around us, or every other skill that we have that we can only remember if we look away from that problem and the things that are working well in our lives. So if you've enjoyed this, please share to motivate and empower other people. Subscribe, turn on the notification button, and come back next week to make our lives more meaningful.